stuff coming from view. So my shuffle array function just takes in a list. It does like a floor random thing. It does this array structuring, destructuring kind of thing to swap I and j positions. Yeah, so that's the shuffle array function, but then there's like a lobby, which is like a computed value. So if there's as long as the list of people is longer than one, it has some different functionality. The winner gets determined if the computed value of the length is one. It returns that person, otherwise it's not a winner yet. And then the roll shuffles the array, picks out that random index and pops them out, and unshifts it and puts it into the top of the losers list. So we're all losers, except for Dallin. He wins every time.
You forgot something. You need to commit your changes.
Yeah, I've got a lot of unfinished.
We need cryptographically secure random numbers next time.
Yeah, let's improve it. But I whipped it together just for a raffle.
So I thought random is cryptographically secure. Not per spec, but per implementation. Every implementation that you're likely to use.
Stacked together really well.
I'm so stoked. This is gonna be so fun. I'm like gonna walk in and be like, hey guys, kind of showed it to some of the guys at the office. And,
Did I do the right one, or do I need to just do the?
You gotta give it a second. Hold on. Don't be so needy. Goodness.
Listen, it broke once, so I'm just expecting it to break again.
That's good. That's not insanity. That is sanity.
All right.
Okay. Hold on. I gotta do the intro here, alright? Calm down your britches. Okay, so, everybody, welcome to another exciting evening of Utah Stack.js. Let's get that energy up there. Roar! In the hosting corner, we have Travis, representing the mighty Vivint. In the audience corner, we have Dallin, and Todd, and Austin, and Niles, and the Agitator. And finally, in the presenters corner...
That was the queerest.
Shh. This is not time for feedback. In the presenters corner, we have the magnanimous, the magnificent, the infamous Manuel.
Sweet.
All right, and go ahead and take it away with React State.
All right, so I wanted to do something pretty simple since I've never presented here. So I just wanted to do something simple like React State and go into the depths and figure out kind of how it works and why we're using it.
That's like the most simple topic of all development.
Right? Yeah. I gotta grease those tires somehow. Is that the right phrase? So yeah, I kind of just wanted to, well, for myself, refine my understanding of it, demystify it a little bit, and kind of, let's see, I should probably have notes over here, and kind of just help others learn it and highlight common mistakes that I know I've made, because that's kind of what triggered this topic, because I knew for the fact I was using React State incorrectly and manipulating everything. And also just to kind of check in on if state is used in 2024. Like, is it still relevant? Are the paradigms shifting? And so, yeah, so let's just kind of get started. And so first off, what is state? And state's basically just like the data and kind of how an application is keeping track of that data, and also kind of state state is typically something that's interactive, or the user can interact with state and make changes to state, and then reactivity is basically something that exists in most of the common frameworks that exist today, for example, Angular, Svelte, and Vue. They all kind of work in different ways. I know that, let's see, off the top of my head, I know Vue has like the built-in reactivity function and just different ways to like create state and interact with state. They all kind of have their own sort of patterns that they're following.
And they influence each other's patterns.
True, yeah. I mean, technically Angular started a lot of the main patterns of a lot of the frameworks, and that was just kind of like adopted by everyone, and yeah, everyone's just kind
Being
of
able to remix others' work is a valuable
Yeah.
skill set.
And I'm assuming with reactivity came the word react. I'm guessing that's where the naming came from. I didn't actually Google that, but I'm just gonna guess that React is called React because of reactivity.
It's a misnomer.
Yeah. Let's see. I wish it was mirroring so I could actually. So I'm gonna be looking this way and talking. So how does React actually approach using state and stuff like that? So state in React, you're mainly just dealing with how just creating data for your application and being able to interact with the state, and whether that's through user interactivity or just different stuff that is happening in your application. According to React, the way that it recommends you set up your state is just kind of break your stuff into break your UI. Wait, how did I go? React recommends that you break your UI into components and let components kind of manage their own state and be able to just kind of interact with each other. And it encourages creating a static UI first and then implementing some type of dynamic stuff. Whether that's different types of state or just different React hooks, because that's kind of where everything's working with now. And then finding the minimal but complete representation of your UI state, that's usually just kind of just being able to be as efficient as possible. And I created a couple examples just to, this one here is just kind of just a basic setup of any type of component you might work with. You have your count state, and then you have your incrementation, and then you're calling your set state function. And you've probably all seen this a million times, but that's just kind of how a lot of the interactivity happens for users. But I also wanted to play around with a more complex example, and of course something went wrong.
Too complex.
Too complex.
Shouldn't have done that.
Oh wait, I'm not connected to the internet.
Stick with the counter example.
I have a lot of examples in here too, which is not a great thing.
Is it on the Vivint Guest Network?
Yeah.
Is that a real Reveal.js presentation?
Oh what?
Reveal.js, is that what you're using for that?
I'm using Slide Dev.
Okay.
Reveal is pretty sweet though.
I haven't used Reveal yet. Slide Dev was just the one
That's the one that I'm using for my next one.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't used any of them, so Slide Dev was what was recommended to me, and I was just just give it a try. And it's built in Vue, which is kind of cool. Okay, so this is kind of awkward to do this. All right, so I kind of built out this little basic, slightly more complex example than just an incrementing component. I just wanted to create just a to-do list. And so I went through and just kind of created just some kind of hard-coded state or hard-coded list of different things that you can check off. And I was trying to demonstrate how a lot of the stuff is rendering. So big thing is you have your initial render, and so you have your list of stuff, and whenever you're clicking on stuff, I think it makes sense to be able to keep track of how everything's rendering. And so every time you click on something, it's going to re-render. If you delete something, you're going to go through and actually see things change. There's now 2 items left, and yeah, basic example, I just kind of did just rendering the list of items, and then just have a delete item or a delete button to delete things, and creating a checklist. Pretty straightforward, but a lot of the stuff is just me just practicing my usage of state and being able to actually work with this stuff more efficiently. So how does state want things to flow? So the current setup of state is just a unidirectional data flow. So that's just kind of having a parent and having a child, and passing things down just via props and being able to kind of control kind of the flow of data that way. there's the topic of inverse data flow, which is, I think I have an example of this one. No, but that's just from the docs. Inverse data flow is the ability of passing down set state functions as props and being able to call those in the children and be able to sort of, I don't know if the right term is emit the actual state change from the child, and that is one way of actually inversing the data flow.
Like dispatch, maybe?
Dispatch, that's probably a better term. Yeah.
The React reducers or dispatch
Yeah.
oriented. Yeah.
And this is how React works. I know other frameworks like Angular, I want to say, is bidirectional data flow, so you're actually able to just pass data back and forth.
New Angular uses RX very heavily as its data.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm not familiar with RX.
Much like, so you know those callbacks.
Oh, yeah.
Callbacks is a simple version of the complex observer pattern
Yeah.
that RX does. So
Cool. Yeah, and I'm not sure with how Vue and Svelte do it. I would
Vue
assume.
does admit, they do a physical
Oh
pattern.
yeah, there's the admit.
Vue uses the children emit events up
Okay.
and props down.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah, and then, so a big part of my research for this presentation is I wanted to actually kind of get under the hood of how React is working, and kind of understand how everything is kind of structured. So one of the big things with React and a lot of these frameworks is the virtual DOM. So similar to any type of website, you have your DOM. That's kind of your tree structure of how the website is set up. React's going to be dealing with an almost identical version of that tree structure, just depending on if state has changed. And so with the virtual DOM, it goes through a process called reconciliation, where it's actually able to check the difference between the previous version of the virtual DOM and the newest version. And if you want to go a step further than that, one of the big things is React's algorithm that it uses. I think it's using the, do I have it in here? Yeah, the fiber architecture, which I didn't have enough time to actually delve deep into the fiber architecture, but that's just kind of how React is trying to efficiently send updates to the DOM and be able to update things in a quick, efficient way, and just sending them out in different batches, so that way you're just saving on memory and being efficient. And I kind of threw together this diagram here, just to sort of showcase kind of how a lot of this is happening. So I think I pulled this partially from React's documentation, but I also sort of wanted to kind of add my own spin to it and document it for my own comprehension. And that's just the rendering cycle. So that this typically happens just in these different phases. So the trigger phase is usually usually acts as some type of user interaction. Unless it's the initial render, then it's just going to automatically trigger. And then the render phase, React will literally just call all the functions in the virtual DOM, which is all your components. And then the commit phase is the actual diffing and finding the differences between the two virtual DOMs, and then appending that to the actual DOM and actually sending that out. And also, if I'm getting any of this stuff wrong, please let me know, because I want to make sure I'm giving you guys good information. Also, I'm clicking right on the wrong thing. Okay.
I think the reconciliation algorithm is currently considered quite slow.
That's what I've heard a lot of. Like a lot of the articles I was reading is that it seems outdated in how a lot of the newer frameworks are running things.
So the signals I think is a big shake-up for React, and I think I don't understand it, but from what I imagine how it's working is like Vue, I believe, uses like proxies. Like there's a way of detecting as values change versus like keeping track of this whole separate tree. I don't know. And so signals is a big change with
Signals is the other one I've been seeing a lot.
And so rather than this like complex diffing of this VDOM tree, it's able to reconcile the changes quicker with just like.
And Signals isn't slated to come out to React anything, right? I know Angular has it and Svelte has like some, or they have like some version of Signals built in.
So Preact, I think, is the guy that did like the
Okay.
Signals version of the React stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't dived deep into Preact. I've heard of it and heard a lot of discussion around it. I don't know too much about that.
It's freaking awesome. It's just a lighter weight React.
I mean, that's good. That's what we want, right? Cool. And so with state, I think a lot of the big things and a lot of the modern React is a lot of the hooks that you're working with. And I kind of wanted to walk through at least a lot of the core hooks and just kind of the use cases and kind of a lot of the mistakes you might see. So with useState, I think that's probably the hook you'll likely use for most of your stuff. Probably like 80 to 90% of all the stuff you got to do can be handled by useStates, and yeah, it's mainly just using for managing data and kind of updating the UI. It's very straightforward. Common mistakes are mainly just, I think, at least a lot of the ones that I've encountered myself, and I remember looking through a lot of previous code I've written, and a lot of the stuff that I ran into was mutating the state. Mutating the state instead of actually calling the set state function. So yeah, don't do this. You're gonna want to. Actually, I think I have it. Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. Don't do this. Just kind of. You're just gonna be calling it again, and then also understanding that state isn't changed immediately. You have to wait for the actual re-rendering process to happen to actually have access to the count to the new state. So this count would actually not be updated.
So not to keep on touting Vue, but I believe you would still have to have like count dot value or something like that, because you can't. The proxy objects have to be not on a primitive value. Mm-hmm. So if you're directly changing like a string or a number, like you can't really proxy that. So that's why they have like dot value on those like references or like
mm-hmm.
the computed values or the.
Is this for the one you're talking about, or
Vue,
or for Vue? Okay.
Yeah. So, but you can directly modify the value directly, and you get instantaneous.
Oh, okay.
You don't have to set state.
Yeah. No, I appreciate the comparison with Vue of how they do it.
There's probably a setter under the hood, though, right?
Yeah, it's an object that has a get and a set on it. But
So is that one?
It's a secret function call.
So is with Vue, is that one actually going through and? I mean, does it have a reconciliation when you're?
I'm sure they're doing some VDOM-ish stuff, but
okay.
I know that there's I forget the name of it, but there is a new flavor of Vue that's being cooked that's also going to do some signal.
Because I know at least with that example, the main reason it's not available immediately is because it's an asynchronous call.
Yeah.
So is the Vue one also asynchronous?
No, it would be like you've mutated that value,
yeah.
And it's immediately available to start.
It's really cool. Yeah, I'd be curious about checking that one out.
The reason why React doesn't update the state right away is due to an optimization, where maybe you want to set state for a bunch of stuff at once.
Yeah.
It'll wait till you're done, so
it just adds it to the queue, right? And then it's just kind of it's gonna wait till the right time to batch update everything.
Yeah, it's like an asynchronous call that doesn't have any weight associated with it. So it'll call it as soon as your current code is done. The reason being, if you want to change the state, if you want to change multiple state variables that affect one component, it won't re-render multiple times. It can batch those for you.
Okay, yeah.
That's why it waits.
Makes sense. And then use effect, the one that I know for a fact I used wrong for probably up until the last maybe 6 months. And the main purpose of use effect, you probably might have already seen the talk that Mike North did a while back. But a lot of times the places you're using use effect are probably not the correct place to actually use effect. And the main purpose of use effect is it's just an escape hatch to try to sync data outside of React, and also to help with some of the lifecycle things like unmounting, and that's basically, at least according to the React team, should be the only time you should be using use effects. And if you want to learn more information, I recommend the Mike North talk. His is actually a pretty cool talk that he did. And yes, there's some of the, did I have a glare? But these are some of the mistakes that I kind of pulled from, oh, no, this is the right one? No. Okay, yeah. These are just some of the mistakes that I know I've done, but also just stuff that you should probably avoid. And I think I have it kind of organized here. Yeah, this is the cool thing I do like about SlideDev is you can kind of do a little step-by-step thing, which I really liked. So trying to, trying to set state inside of a use effect, and also forgetting the dependency array. That's, for one, it's going to cause an infinite loop, and you shouldn't be setting state that way. You can just set it outside of it, and that should basically do the same thing. Another thing is the actual, let's see, forgetting to do a return. Wow, actually, I'm just realizing that I'm missing some stuff in this one. Okay, forgetting to use the return statement in a use effect. That's another thing. So with this one, we're just setting an interval for just a second. But if the component unmounts during that, it's going to keep going for the remainder of time. So if that was 10 seconds, it would be running in the background. Another example, if you're making a connection to some type of database or making some type of connection, it's going to stay connected, and you're going to run into like a memory leak. That's a pretty common thing. And then, yeah, so this is kind of the fix of just having a return statement, and this one should hopefully clear out any potential memory leaks in a use effect.
That gives you back a teardown function to invoke, right?
What?
Or does it automatically call that?
That is the teardown function.
Okay.
That is the unmount equivalent.
And it'll automatically call it for you, yeah.
Yeah, well, only if you have the return statement. If you don't have a return statement, you're letting it keep going.
There was
Yeah.
like some random thing at one point. I was like coming up with a bug in one of my components, and I asked ChatGPT a question, and like for some reason it's telling me to set state within the use effect. I was like,
It's probably because it's probably referencing old code where everyone was doing it that way.
yeah. So I was like, oh, man, ChatGPT, freaking AI.
People
So
are still
I-
doing it.
Yeah,
I mean,
I thought it was funny, but
Like I
was
said,
just
last
like,
6 months I was still doing this.
Yeah, I just
uh,
thought it was funny that ChatGPT had mentioned that, like, to fix my bug, set state within the use effect. I was like, you're false.
Yeah.
They should make it easy to like retrain, like submit, like, no, this is a bad answer, guys.
Yeah.
Like,
I guess there is the thumbs up and thumbs
is
down,
there?
but I don't know how effective that really is about training it.
Well,
And it's also pulling code from what 2021. Is that the?
I think they just
is that the
recently
cutoff?
updated it.
Is it recent?
GPT came out at the worst possible time, because if GPT had not come out when it did, Tab 9 would have taken over the marketplace, and they actually had a strategy. Tab 9 and I forget the name of the other one. But there's two competitors. They actually had a strategy that would have worked, because they were curating code that was good code. Whereas GPT is just like, it takes everything.
Is Tab 9 the one that you were using like locally or something that one time? I can't remember if that was one that Todd recommended
Cody.
or
Who's a different dude?
what was it? The one that
Coding was
no, it had a different name where you can train it yourself.
Llama,
Llama.
you can choose the models, but that's
Yeah.
not specifically a code plugin, whereas Tab 9 is a code plugin.
Okay.
And there's another one that I forget the name of.
And then
That
Google
is
just
also
came out
equivalent.
with is it Gemini?
Coding
Uh,
was
like,
Yeah, Gemini just came out and it
Coding?
seems to be doing alright, but I don't know
It's
what the model is for that one.
sorry to digress.
No, I like the discussion. Yeah.
Further digression, I've tested Codium, the free plugin, against just Microsoft Copilot. Microsoft Copilot is actually really good and also free. So just throwing it out there.
Not actually free.
I've tested. Have you used Codium much? You might be comparing it against something else.
No, you said, which one is free?
Codium and Microsoft Copilot are both free.
Microsoft Copilot is not.
It doesn't
What's
ding
your
your
take?
bank account.
Yes, sure.
He's not in debt right now.
Am I getting bamboozled?
They're just absorbing your information.
I mean, you're the product.
Well-
that's the whole model.
Well,
of
of
like,
course.
if it's free, you're the product.
Like, of course they're like listening to everything I'm telling it. So of course I changed my variable names and stuff.
Good.
All right.
Yeah, just use A, B, C, and D for all variables. That way they can't tell.
I changed them all to like test and heyo.
Nice. All right. Let's see. And context. That's the other. This is one that was actually kind of relatively new to me because I hadn't actually like built my own context provider before. Mostly just like consume the data from it. But this one's basically just being able to create state or just create state that that's accessible by like by nearby context or just anything that's within the scope of the provider that you set.
Like higher up in the tree, you set a context, even maybe
Yes.
at the root of your app, even.
Yeah, you basically you're able to like kind of control the scope of what it has access to it, whether how high you want it or how low you want it.
And typically with components, you're having to what they used to call, I'm sure they still call it this, but prop drill.
Yeah.
So you have to end up like passing props
That's
all
one thing
the way
that's
down.
different to include in the use cases. Yeah,
So
to
the
avoid
nice
prop
thing-
drilling.
So
yeah.
the nice thing about the use context paradigm is that you could still have like a root level state,
Mm-hmm.
and then your leaf node clear down in your component tree can then just say use context. So you don't have to prop drill
Yeah.
all the way down.
Yeah, you're able to just access it from anywhere within the scope that you set within it, and yeah. And I feel like a lot of the common use cases is like authentication or being able to like get information from the root or some kind of setting that information kind of at whatever scope you want or whatever height. Yeah. And I think, did I have an example of this one? I did. Yeah, I was trying to create examples for all of these hooks just so I can kind of get some practice in. And so with this one, I just have it set where the guest eats cheese. And I just went through and I created my context and then I created my provider. I just went through and just kind of set all the information in there. And then I just created like a logout function. And then, yeah, I created I just had it so you can pass in children. And then I can't see anything in here.
We can
So
turn
in
off
my,
the lights maybe.
Oh no, I have to like move my head. And then and here's kind of where I'm setting my scope and being able to log in, and then it's telling me that my dog eats cheese. And I also had an example in here of what happens when you try to enable something that is outside of the scope. And that is just letting you know that you cannot destructure the property user because you didn't give access to that component. And so I'll just comment that out, or I can just move it inside, and it shouldn't have access to it. And now the guest eats cheese, and now Manuel eats cheese twice.
What else do you eat?
I want to know.
That's
a good
that's
segue
probably-
into spreading some of this Mexican candy cheer.
Yeah.
Let's pass the Mexican candy bag around.
Is that with chili in it?
Some of the suckers have what's called saladitos, which are salted plums.
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool.
My favorite is the rose one.
Yeah, it's like a peanut.
It's like a powder.
Like
It breaks like super easily.
It's like a really crumbly, like nut, sweet, peanut, almost like peanut butter-ish.
Yeah. It's like if it was like powderized peanut butter.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Compliments to my wife for reminding me to bring treats.
Did you like? Was it like you just had like a party or something, or?
No, her brother sent some up from California, so we got a
Nice.
shipment.
I mean, I'm gonna say you can get like all of those from here.
No, yeah, we can. But it was like in bulk. So this
Oh,
is,
okay.
I just grabbed it.
Oh, okay, you're like
We've
a
got,
handful.
a bunch of stuff.
I was gonna say like most of the ones I saw in there, I was like, I can get this from like the
No, yeah,
corner
yeah.
store.
There's like coconut in there. These guys are coconut if you're a coconut fan.
Alright, let me try one.
Yeah. And then I'm just gonna go through and it's kind of, that's kind of the steps for creating your own context is you create it, you create your provider and kind of how you want to structure that out, and then you just create your scope or create you wrap your provider around the children that you want. And then reducer, this one was,
Moving on.
What?
I think you're selling what you've done short.
what's up?
Go back.
You produced a component that takes children as a prop.
Oh, yeah.
And then
Oh, yeah.
but it serves as a wrapper around children. That has a neat property, right?
Where you can, you're talking about where you can like just put children inside of it? Like children components?
You already know this, but I'm referring to how if you pass children to this auth provider as a prop, rather than defining it in a JSX tree, then those children do not necessarily re-render every time this context provider re-renders.
Oh yeah, that's the thing you were showing me. Yeah, yes. That's one thing I did forget to include, yeah.
The scope of your context is no longer just like the entire tree that contains. It's just whatever is hooked into it.
Yes.
Which is quite vast.
Yes. That is one thing there's a lot of things I probably forgot to include in a lot of these hooks, but yes, that is one thing that you can do that does make things a lot nicer. All right, and then use reducer. This is the one that is probably the most confusing to me, but I think it's relatively like, the main purpose of it is if you have a lot of logic in order to change the state, where you can still do, like, reducer can do just about everything that useState can do. It's more if you have if you're doing a lot of business logic in order to change your state, or if you have like your set state function and there's just like a lot of stuff going on in there, you can kind of create designations for all that business logic and break it into its own reducer function and have just different cases and that you can dispatch to kind of it's more of like a helping with cleaning up state code.
So the interesting bit, from what I understand about use reducer, is it's the building block of use state is actually a wrapper around use reducer. Use reducer is like
Is it a precursor?
Yeah, I believe it, at least old.
I know use reducer is kind of brought in from like the Redux days.
Well, it can be used in that sense, but
yeah.
the foundational flow of it, because it's like reducing state and dispatching actions.
Yeah.
That mechanics is use state is just a convenience wrapper around writing a use reducer.
I did not know that, actually.
I don't know how it actually works on the inside, but you could abstract it exactly the other way around if you wanted to. Be like, well, use reducer is just use state with extra garbage.
Yeah. I mean, the nice things about use reducer is you don't have to worry about React. Yeah, like you're creating the logic that is changing the state.
Yeah, it's a true building block layer.
Yeah,
you've got a lot more. You can do fancier things with it.
Yeah,
just like
you can get really customized with it. It's an example I created for this one.
Inside a function.
Yeah. The example I created for this one was I created a bunch of, let's see, is that the right one? Yeah, okay. So first, we're going to look at using it just with use state. So we have a bunch of state that we've created for our cart, the total items, the total price, and we're looking at all the functions that we need to do in order to add something to the cart, remove it, and then clear the cart. So it's a lot of set functions that we're calling. I mean, it's not a lot, but for this example, we're just going to say that we have to do a lot of set state functions in order to accomplish this functionality of adding a cart, removing the cart, and then if we need to clear it, we can clear it. So if we actually go back to this one where we create our reducer function, where we have these different use cases, or these different cases in our switch statement, which we're pulling from our action.type. And so for context, let's see. For context, anytime we're wanting to actually dispatch something, we dispatch an object. I don't know if I guess anyone can speak to this, but are you able to run dispatch functions with anything but an object with like type or kind of I guess you could technically customize it, but does anyone else have an experience with reducers, like kind of, how to word this, actually passing down anything but like this kind of syntax of like type and then the payload?
Yeah.
I don't think that there's a restriction to it. I don't know how you would handle just like a string or something. That's an object is convenient, and the
Yeah.
tradition is to have.
Yeah,
Redux demands an object.
Yeah, I know that it's like it's the most common use case. I've always been curious about if there's like use cases where it makes sense to not pass an object and just pass the value itself or the payload, or I don't know. I thought that just kind of occurred to me.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that like the thing that makes sense to do with use reducer is don't do it, just use state. Like,
Yeah.
it's just like some Redux.
Like I said, they're pretty
messages.
interchangeable. It just kind of depends if you run into like a use case where you have a bunch of business logic that you're doing with your set state functions.
Yep.
That's kind of really the only one that I've sort of come across that makes the most sense. But for the most part, you're passing down an object with your type and then your payload, and we're just running that through a switch statement and just returning our state that, or all the business logic changes that we're wanting to do from that. And yeah, and it kind of, I mean, it cleans up the code in the sense that, you know, we're not having to do a bunch of set state functions, rely on React's reconciliation process and do all that stuff, where we can just set it up ourselves and just send it out. And yeah, and then it just kind of creates this functionality where we can just kind of add it, and then everything's all being just dispatched with a different case, and then we can just clear it and do all that stuff. Very, very nice, but not a lot of use cases.
There's plenty of use cases.
I mean, there is, but yeah. I haven't found myself like needing to like, oh, if I only had a reducer right now. I feel like
it's way more convenient. I've got to manage these state values and have a use state for each of those. Use reducer could be convenient if you've got like a complex like object. I don't know if shopping cart's the right example, but you've got something where values are accumulating over time.
Can you write a function for that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
All right, and then let's get back to this one. And then, yeah, I'm just kind of going through just kind of the breakdown of how reducers are set up. And then useRef. This one is a very straightforward hook. useRef is meant to just reference a JSX element or an HTML element, or I guess just a DOM element. And you know, most of the time you're going to run into potential mistakes where the mistake that I ran into at my last job was treating useRef as a variable and not an actual reference value. And I don't know what the use case was, but it was it was a race condition where we were just, you know, ref was it was available between renders, and so we just did that. And looking back on it, I was like, I did not learn ref properly. And then, yeah, assuming useRef triggers a re-render, that's kind of what I was thinking. And yeah, you know, referencing the DOM and actually using it properly, and then just remembering that it has a .current, which is how you're able to access the current version of the reference. That one's pretty straightforward. Anyone have any cool stories from using refs? I mean, that's pretty straightforward, I'd say.
Yeah, that's number 2 in my React hooks tier list.
Yeah, it's pretty nice.
Good hook.
In Viewland, they do also have one that's also called useRef, and it is very similar to that, where you're keeping references to like DOM elements or anything really.
Yeah.
All of the other computed values and stuff are actually references.
Yeah, I've used that one before.
Rather than .current, it's .value is kind of the
What's my view knowledge is like View 2.
Yeah,
And I think we were using refs back then as
View,
well.
yeah, View 3 is much closer to React's
Really?
hooks.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, use callback. This one was very new to me. I've never actually used it in any of my code until like a month ago. And this one, I mean, similar to use memo, if anyone's used use memo, you're just like memoizing kind of a function instead of an actual value. And it's mainly just meant for like expensive functions that you don't want to like rerun a million times, or just run when things, you know, when something in the dependency array changes. That's kind of like a lot of the times you want to run it. And I created an example for this one, and I don't even know if I did it properly, but let's just quickly go through the setup. So this is an example I kind of set up where I just have a count and have a multiplier. And I have this, you know, I have my handle click callback, and then I just have the dependency array for when the multiplier value changes, and that's just being changed in our input down here. And so the example I did for this one, and I'm hoping I actually used it efficiently, but I have this parent component, and then I have the child component that we just have this input value in here. And so this is like a simple, just kind of click, and it just increments. And then if I update it to like 10, it's going to increment by 10. And so the way that I built it in here is whenever the multiplier value changes from this input, we're going to, we have it set up in a use callback. And I'm not entirely sure if that is the best use case for a use callback, and I'm hoping one of you guys maybe.
So, yeah, like you already called out with use memo, use callback is extremely similar. It's just caching. Like you want to use callback if you've got a slow operation that you don't want to be triggered on every second.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah, you set up your dependency list of what it's going to watch for those values to change, and then only when those it will then reprocess the function to give the new cache value.
Sounds good.
The underlying paradigm here is that React kind of wants to re-render everything all the time.
Yeah.
And gives you ways to like carve out little bits if that ends up being too slow. And this is one of those ways to carve out bits.
And that's kind of how I was seeing it as well. I just wasn't sure if it was like, because I know memoizing, you're memoizing the actual value versus memorizing the actual like, callback function. But that actually makes sense of just like, you know, this function gets called frequently, so we can try to like memorize it and cache it a little bit to try to like, you know, shave off a few milliseconds, I'm assuming.
In this case, it would be, you know, very minor savings.
Yeah.
The sort that React doesn't want you to care about. But there are sometimes cases where like, you know, I really don't need to rerun like this, I don't know, image generation or whatever, every single re-render that happens 10 times a second. Maybe I should put that in a use callback.
Makes sense. I guess it's kind of something you like think about after the fact in your like optimization kind of phase.
Yeah, that's how React wants you to think about it. Optimize as carve-outs rather than all the time.
Makes sense. Yeah, and then use memo. You know, I already mentioned it. Yeah, we're just memoizing an expensive calculation that is returning a value versus returning a function, and yeah, just kind of avoid some re-renders and, you know, common mistakes are, you know, little basic things, dependencies, and then one thing I was reading online is if you use too many use memos, you're not really actually saving a lot of stuff. When you're trying to like memoize everything. I think in certain cases you're even like you're like doing the opposite of optimizing. You're just making things a little bit worse. Not too sure. I mean, there's a lot of conversations. I've seen so many articles about like a lot of chatter of like if memoize is even like actually a good hook or not. But you guys can be the judge of that.
It's just the same as use callback. It's a trade-off between like making your code harder to follow and making it a bit faster.
Makes sense.
And then of course if you use it everywhere, your code might also be buggier because if you just use it reflexively, then maybe things do need to re-render that you're not letting re-render. Because React doesn't want you to use this 90% of the time. It wants you to use this 1% of the time.
Yeah, I think I think that's what the documentation was saying. It's like it's only if you really like need it, but it's like not really. Yeah, it's shaving off a little bit, but not too much. And then 2024, a lot of the stuff that I was kind of seeing with a lot of the current paradigm of kind of state management kind of came down to things like Redux. I've been seeing things like Recoil.js.
There's a lot.
Zustland, yeah. And you know, it's just kind of like it's just kind of picking your flavor. You know, you're still working with a lot of the same kind of optimizations and kind of how state is working with a lot of this stuff. One thing I did kind of want to mention is like server rendering. That's kind of changing a little bit of the landscape of kind of how we're thinking about state, whether we need to actually create our own state or just get our data directly from the server. I think I had a slide in here for Next.js and Remix. I mean, these are just kind of the common React kind of ones. There's server rendering across the board with like Gatsby, and I think Vue has their own stuff for server rendering. But I think it's not doing away with like state management. It's more just bringing up questions of like, do we need to manage this like on the client side, or can we just get our data directly from the server? With Next.js, their approach is more of like, do we need to actually get, do we actually want our data to be mutable or immutable? And, for example, if we need to get information that is potentially sensitive, like user information, we probably don't want to fetch that data and or potentially open up security risks where we can just get the data directly from our React server components and just be able to like sort of cut out some of the middleman and actually just get our data directly. Versus mutable stuff like just client side rendering. That's kind of that's what most of this talk has been about, is a lot of the client side way of managing state. And so in terms of like kind of how it is today, I feel like there's still state management happening on any website. It's just more of different things to think about, whether that's server side or client side. I think that's kind of the current conversation, at least that I've been sort of reading up on and trying to understand kind of what makes the most sense for a new type of use case. And Remix is the same thing. The comments they made on their documentation was they look at it as just cache management. That was their the way that they refer to as state management is, do we want to is it just managing our cache for whatever data we're storing, whether that's from like they like to recommend doing stuff more related to URL stuff or cookies or session storage. That's kind of the way that Remix wants to that is the opinion they're trying to portray of like, do we need to actually manage our state directly, or can we just let a lot of our code just run directly on the server and not have to like worry about a lot of this stuff? And that's why they mentioned cache management, because that's kind of like a lot of stuff that's very like minuscule to like what they're trying to accomplish.
The pendulum continues to swing.
Yeah, I mean, I remember. Wait, did I not include it in here? Oh, I didn't include it. I was trying to include a meme about like the pendulum swinging back to PHP and like how everything is like evolving basically back to that.
The thing that's really interesting to me is using HTMX, which will be purely just leaving it up to the server to serve HTML.
Yeah.
And it's got little attributes in the markup of, okay, just refetch this chunk and replace this.
Mm-hmm.
And so it totally reduces the size and complexity of the client-side JavaScript to essentially nothing. You can still do whatever JavaScript you need, but for a stateful app, put that emphasis on the server and use HTML as the communication medium instead of JSON.
I mean, that's kind of the paradigm with Remix. Is they're just trying to build a framework that is emphasizing just the web APIs. Like they're just trying to let the network itself just handle a lot of this stuff.
But there's still a lot of React.
I mean, it's still React syntax.
And there's a lot of rehydration and complexity and stuff that they're doing under the covers. But yeah, like we can even strip away a bunch of that.
I do remember at some point in one of their previous roadmaps of Remix, they were trying to be like language agnostic at some point.
I remember there being like
a comment made on that or something like that, and that kind of went away. I don't remember what changed.
Remix or React is the most popular kid on the block, so
yeah, and I guess it makes sense. But it would be interesting if they went language agnostic, how they would sort of approach building out a lot of their stuff, because they don't. There's not a lot of built-in hooks that they use besides just like a lot of the routing stuff. So it would be interesting to see how they would tackle a lot of the getting away from React type of syntax. But that is kind of a lot of my coverage of kind of learning state myself, and also just kind of being able to utilize a lot of the stuff that React offers. And yeah, that is kind of what I put together. And yeah, I did a bunch of reading, and most of it was like React stocks was just like, yeah, just don't worry about it too much. Just use state. That was like 80% of their docs. Just use state, and you're good.
Yeah, direct stocks are very opinionated.
Yeah.
Just do this. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's usually kind of how it ends up being. But
Yeah, so one thing I really appreciate about this presentation is that it reveals that in order to understand React state, you must explain all of React, because they are one and the same.
yeah, that's
But
the further I went.
the view layer. What are you talking about?
I mean, yeah. And then I want to eventually learn HTMX because that's the one I haven't actually looked at. I've heard everyone mention it, but I haven't actually like looked into HTMX.
Yeah. If you're server side focused, if you're working in a team of more server side people, that would probably be a good choice. If you're a traditional React shop, it's a tough sell. It's a big paradigm shift.
Yeah.
But a lot of that latest stuff is let's reduce complexity on the JavaScript layer.
I mean, even Next.js, it's like anytime it's running server components by default, and so it immediately yells at you anytime you import anything from React, like use state or use effect or whatever. And so you have to like sort of shift your brain of like, okay, we're just getting data using the built-in getters from Next, and then that's it. Like, it's interesting to like have that sort of shift.
Yeah.
But yeah. Yeah, I learned a lot from this past couple months just studying this stuff, and it was mostly just how much wrong I was doing, and that was the fun part of like, all right, cool. Everything I learned at like all my previous jobs working with React has been like it was weird. It was weird because I remember managers were like, yeah, just do it this way. I'm like, but you're a manager, you have way more experience than I do, and you're telling me to like make those like state changes and use effect or use ref as a variable. So it's a little bit of a nice reflection of like
The hardest part of React is just it's a choose your own adventure game. There's all those different choices of what flavor of state management you want to use,
Yeah.
and there's always new state management libraries coming out that everybody wants to change. Like Remix or what's the Redux was
Yeah.
the grandfather guy, and then all these other flavors of came along, especially in the era of GraphQL coming into play. So there's like Apollo, which was a cool paradigm because that introduced. It was right around
the Apollo the GraphQL, yeah.
Yeah, and so that use. What's the tan stack query thing? The use
React Router or use query.
Use query
Yeah.
was first created by Apollo for their
Yeah.
GraphQL stuff, and then TanStack genericized it so it's use query, but you provide the function, so you can just do like a regular fetch versus having to have all of the GraphQL resolvers and stuff all like wired up.
I want to say that Bob, who runs the Remix, is going to try to get Tanner to come do a talk. I was looking on Twitter and they were like, Bob's been really adamant about trying to get speakers for the next couple months, and I think Tanner might come do a talk.
Good. He's done a good job of keeping it framework agnostic, so he has
Yeah.
a flavor of use query that's for you.
When he came out with this newest update, I was really impressed of how he built some type of like compiler where it keeps track of the file name and the actual code itself. So if you make changes to either, it will update accordingly, whether it's the file name or the actual code that you've made changes to. It was really cool because I watched it happen because like they were just changing some code in whatever file they're working with, and it immediately changed the file structure and like the naming convention.
Wow.
It was really cool. Yeah, Tanner is like a genius, so like, it's crazy.
Yeah. So if you're continuing on your state journey, TanStack query, I would suggest.
Yeah, I worked with that one a little bit, and I've been
Because rather than doing like component state,
Yeah.
you're doing, I forget what he calls it, it's like server state. You're more dealing with like the AJAX responses and stuff like that. And then your components can just like use that state. And then it's doing similar stuff with the use memo or whatever. You've got that kind of like dependency of like, it's like the key of the value that you're, so if any of your query parameters
it's like what you're
or
keeping
whatever,
track of.
that will trigger the new fetch. And it's also got some really smart logic of like, I want to always cache this. I don't care if these values change, versus, you know, I want to do some business logic to determine if I should clear out my cache. So other like renders will then just re-render the cache and not do all these
Makes sense.
AJAX calls and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, like I mentioned, you can get away with like 80 to 90% with just use state.
Yep. Yeah. And that's what they're pushing. And that's
Yeah. I mean, I feel like when React made the update, when they updated their website, 2021 or 2022, I think that was them just like, we need to get away from like trying to like recommend all these like crazy like band-aids for all these hooks. Let's just like, let's push use state, and then we'll just have these weird use cases for all these other ones.
Because I would say the majority of your components should be, they used to call them dumb components, but like, what's the word? Sans business logic, right? You don't want to put your...
Oh yeah, it's a dumb versus like pure components. Is that what we're talking
Well,
about?
pure components is a different thing, but yeah, like dumb components are, the parent gives all the props to render. It's up to the parent
Yeah.
to do all the Ajax-y stuff and just give it props. And so if you've got those kind of dumb components, and state is like kind of your, so you can all do your local state in your dumb component, and so use state, it should be like your kind of main tool to reach for, but
Yeah.
it's the more complex layers above where
Makes
you want to
sense.
do like your reducers and your
Yeah.
Ajax and stuff.
It's like is the term is it the source of truth, or they have a term for something, I think.
Yeah,
what you're,
like a
what you're referring to,
singleton
or single source of truth.
yeah, you want to have like an app layer that has your login authentication stuff. You don't want every component to have to.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Here's a change I'd like to see in React. I think they should rename use effect to use footgun,
Use
and
what?
that would better communicate that you should use it much less.
Wait, what did you call it?
Use footgun.
Foot gun?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah.
There was, I did appreciate that they called like dangerously set inner HTML. It was like one of their methods. Like, okay, I guess I will set this HTML. Like,
I live on the edge.
Yeah. Yeah, this is like.
So,
They should just call it just like what they always call it, just like an escape hatch or something.
it made sense for the time, because you're doing a side effect. Because in the world of a pure function, side effect, like a pure function is whatever inputs you give it, it's always going to produce the same output. A side effect is some ray of light coming out of there that you don't want to be effing with your stuff.
Some
So,
kind
like,
of pollution coming out of that component.
you can launch Z missiles in a function, and you don't want to do that. So a pure function, a use effect is you're intentionally, so like what are the good examples that the early presentations that I saw about it was like the title of the HTML page, right? You want to like, you've got some deep component that you're working with, but you're in some route and you want to change the title of the browser. So it's an outside effect that you're applying.
Okay. Makes sense. Well, I'm glad I was able to give a presentation that was like a refresher for a lot of people.
90% of the time.
all right. Thank you. So, I did want to ask though, did you ever wonder where the state was?
Like where it existed.
Yes, where it existed.
I mean, didn't it mostly?
Choose your own adventure.
No. I
Are
want.
you talking about like whether it was like stored in like memory or something like that,
Yeah,
or
it's
like
just browser memory, unless you're doing the server side thing.
Hold on, I'm gonna bring something up real quick. I'm gonna peel back.
the curtain? Is this the curtain pull we're
You
about
only
to do?
want to have it available to the nearest parent of all the
No.
children that need that state.
Talking about
No,
like
you're
all
not.
state where it exists. Is that what you're referring to?
So how does use state work? Where is the this object?
oh, the this object.
Where is the thing that the state is being
The-
attached
The
to?
component.
I mean, isn't that where like the what is it, the crate?
Because you never
Crate-
assign it anywhere. There's no,
Global this?
Yeah, it's ultimately global.
there's not.
But
in the
it's
global.
bound to the component. So There's magic that happens under the hood with those hooks, right?
Yeah.
You saw how it's like use state, use state, use state. You have to do those at the top of your component. You can't have them in an if statement.
Yes.
Because if an if statement changes it, they're doing some like array positioning of.
Yes. Yes, that.
So
Yeah, there's a list, and that list has to be in the same order every time, or else it will get very confused.
yeah.
Yes. So that's what I was gonna.
And so when you use those hooks, though, ultimately that hook could be pulling from a provided context. It could be pulling from other higher global state and coming into your component. But ultimately, the state of that component is held within the component.
Is that where like it's storing? I'm trying to think of, is that related to like how it reacts? Like where it's keeping track of the virtual DOM and stuff like that?
Kinda. That's like the render loop or whatever. It's different. Like this is like the maybe so because it's needing to watch what changed between renders.
I mean, like it's tracking the difference in state of the two versions of the virtual DOM that it's comparing.
How many?
Yeah, it's really a different system, although it's like, it's a whole other
I mean, it might be related to like, well, I mean, no, the algorithm is the fiber architecture that it's working with. It might be like one layer above that, where it's like how it's like how no, it's not how it's appending everything.
So before hooks came along, everything was class based. So you would write like class components.
Yeah.
So that's where those pure.
I actually did have a slide at one point in time of like starting with like the class components of how it used to.
So when class components were king, and then these function components started coming out, that's where pure components came into play.
Yeah.
It's like these little dumb functional components that don't need a whole class definition. But the hooks paradigm makes it so everything's just a function component.
Yeah.
And they're doing that trick with the use hooks to keep track of the state within that function reference.
As a fun exercise a while back, I sketched out a design for.
Oh wait, I did actually.
a React
Wait, I'm actually already built an example of this.
I didn't actually make the thing, but I have the
That
design
you're
for
building
it.
out?
And I worked out that the only way hooks could possibly work would be getting added to a list, because otherwise, just would not be able to track what you're doing.
Where's my example at for this? I did build an exaggerated version of how use state works.
So it's
Might be
something.
So a use state would be inside of my component. And it's not like a defined function like that. It's a import use state from React.
Well, what I'm showing here is so there's something internal to React that's like load app, right?
Yeah.
And a thing happens, and it's going to be like components,
JSX happens.
thingy, and then so let's say let component is this. Then it's going to be let state equals c dot state, or well, I guess it'd be something more like c if not c dot state.
AJ's
Let's see. I think can I share this
You
with
should
you?
know all the work this out in first principles. It can't be done in 5 minutes, unfortunately.
What?
Let's see. I think I built exactly where you're building it right now. Let me send it to you.
And then this would be like run because it's attached some sort of loader component thingy,
This
And
is
then-
the layer that nobody ever looks at. Though.
Okay.
and then it's gonna be
Open up my code pen.
just 1 second. Just 1
okay.
second. So then it's gonna be like current component. So I guess that's what this would be like current component equals C, and then here use state. It's going to use current component, and then, so it's doing something weird like this behind the scenes, where when the app loads the component does what you want to do. Okay, now I'll open
It
up.
does a lot of stuff you would never do yourself in your own.
Yeah, it basically has a function for like rendering and a function for like updating the UI and kind of going through it.
There's like
And then there's an update state function, which that's kind of where you go through and like you have your global state variable type of thing that you're kind
The
of keeping
audience
track
of
of it.
React
All right,
is
where
never
where did you send me this?
Oh yeah, sorry, I sent it through Discord.
only if you're
Where?
an author
Who?
of
You.
React.
Where? How? I don't see it
Direct
in
message.
the Utah Stack JS chat.
Are you Agnesi?
No.
Who's
Why would I
Agnesi?
be Agnes?
I don't know. Who did I just send a message to?
My wife?
That was probably your wife then. I thought it was you I was talking to the whole time.
No, he's Aquaman.
No, my name's not Agnes.
What? I thought that was like a username. Or
Agnes J.
I just like I
Listen,
like to go
I've heard
by
like 5
Agnes.
different names from you today. Okay.
Aquaman. Send it to Aquaman.
No.
I've heard
Just put it in the Utah. Put it in the
Aquarius.
Utah Stack JS channel.
All right, give me a second.
No, no sex.
What?
Yeah, so I saw like the React documentary last year, which
This,
I don't.
this was the
recommend.
example I should have shown, but it was basically an exaggerated version of how the state stuff. It's not like exactly how React is handling everything, but
How do I get rid of all this stuff so I can
just clear it out, and then you might be able to change the view to make it horizontal. But yeah. So in this example, I was trying to build out just like an exaggerated way of trying to showcase how the state is changing.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and then you just have your state variable that's global, and then I'm just like creating connections to all the DOM elements, and then creating a function for rendering and updating the UI, and then I had a timeout just to kind of see the. So this example basically came from trying to show an example of the rendering cycle of like what's changing behind the scenes. And so that's kind of explaining some like the set timeouts for stuff, and then just like the incrementation kind of setup. So if you actually go to the actual white screen below and actually test it, it's gonna be quick, but you should be able to kind of see kind of like how things are kind of changing for each render.
Nice.
And that's kind of like how things are happening behind the scenes.
Yeah. So what a responsible programmer would do
Is not rewrite React because it's already been written, and just consume it and write your view layer, your dumb components. You don't need to write another React.
I would not want anything like React. No.
I know, so I use Vue.
No, but what I'm saying is that if this were done responsibly, then what you would do is you would pass in the component state, call it S or whatever, right? And so then when you have your component, you would be receiving S, and then you would call something like s.useState, and so on and so forth.
Short variable names won't run your code any faster.
Well, yeah, but
It'll compile
when it's
marginally.
when it's something like I, because if you are doing math, you know that I stands for the counter, then it makes sense, and this would be
I
something
always spell that as iterator.
so ubiquitous in React.
And if you work for Microsoft, it's like I iterator, factory.
Or if you use the new JavaScript, I think that that's actually what it's called, isn't it? On NVM, it's like iterator, symbol, reactor, anyway. But yeah, because if you did it this way, it would be intuitively obvious, and you wouldn't have the problems with the if statements, you wouldn't have all of this behind the scenes magic. And then you'd know, then you'd actually have an object that's scoped, and I'm sure that they'll come up with some, we couldn't do it this way because then it would allocate an object every time the function's called, and I would just call BS on that because you can also pre-allocate objects. I don't know. I think they just wanted it to be cute. They wanted it to look like not JavaScript.
That should be your homework assignment, is to go look at the React source and see what they're doing, because you would understand it.
So I wanted to do that.
Can you look at it through
I
the
understand
node
it is.
modules?
Yeah.
Can you see?
Yeah, you could look at the node module source. They're probably just doing the dist, but you could pull up their Git pretty easy.
Yeah, so I saw the React documentary last year, which I don't recommend because it's really like cloying and like no one involved knows what critical thinking is. But one thing they emphasized was that in the early conversations around the development of React and Facebook, it was extremely difficult for anybody to understand what React even was, because just like the code paradigm it was following was entirely new and strange and original. And then of course, once React came out, they needed like a bunch of new ES-linked rules to cover the correct way to code in the new paradigm they invented. It's just, yeah, it is a super weird, different thing that you would never do yourself.
Yeah, one of the co-creators he said something that basically amounted to the problem with React is JavaScript. It was
Dan Abramov?
What was the thing that was supposed to come after React that was supposed to be hyper adopted? Reason. Yeah, so the guy who created Reason, he didn't say the problem with React is JavaScript, but like expand that out in 3 sentences with some flowers, and that's basically, he said something like, and what we came to understand with the reactive functional model and all of the great benefits of the React design and everything in the universe that's great and glorious and godlike, blah, blah, blah. But JavaScript just got in the way, you know? And so Reason was born. And I wonder.
So from the start, it was trying to not be JavaScript.
Yeah. Let me see if I can.
So it's just been PHP?
Find
Mario Jazz, what? That's a good recommendation.
React to the future.
Mario Jazz.
Dude,
I learn a lot from people's YouTube recommendations.
That's
my
not
go-to
one
is
of
Anime
houses for-
Lo-Fi. I got the Legend of Zelda just sitting there.
Nice.
Oh man, it's so soothing.
Okay. So Jordan
Is
walked.
there more pizza out there? You want any? Somebody's got to eat it.
So let me see if we can we get.
Wait, that's the exact reason I'm calling.
Thanks for coming to ReasonConf. And I also want to thank Traffic and Mike for putting this event on. It's really incredible what you've done. I really appreciate it, and so does everyone else. Also, thank you to all of the sponsors that pitched in and helped make this event possible. So, I'm Jordan, and I want to talk about React and Reason today.
You can control that in
So I
YouTube,
work
you know
on-
that, right?
No, you can't.
In the settings.
No, check this. This one you can. Dang it! It didn't update.
Right,
If you want to go
thanks for
faster
coming to
than
ReasonConf. And I also want to thank
Yeah, I was sorry. I
Traffic
thought you were
and
trying to. I was talking about 2.0.
Personally, I refuse to watch YouTube video without just downloading it and opening it
So I'm
reveals.
burning in its favorites, I think what and my problems. So my goal, first of all, is not as fast as the
That's a little bit too quick.
What, you can't understand that?
No. There's some point you can have all the there. We have some bars.
Up your game.
I did put things in the project as well. So in 2011, I created the React.js framework. Then I shifted my focus to mobile, where I co-founded the React Native project with Really. And most recently, I started Reason Effort with the coders and community to help build out one community that makes up the Reason ecosystem. What is Reason? Reason is a fast and safe programming language based directly on OCaml. So the way I like to think about it is that Reason brings the ideas and principles that you like about React to the whole language. But most importantly, I see it as a way to unlock a much more ambitious future for UI development.
So here you only have a few
All right,
seconds.
so React. We open source React in 2013.
You scroll down all the way?
When I presented at JSConf. And I haven't really done a lot of conference talks since then.
When you scroll down all the way,
But I do go to a lot of meetups. And I talk to a lot of people and I hear stories about people adopting React.
You have-
And
yeah,
a lot of
you
stories
can do
about
2x if you
people
want.
say, React made my job fun again. And
I guess
get
it's not
feedback.
fast enough for you.
I try to think about why is that. Because React provides like out-of-the-box integration and not having it's not neat. Although that's a really great interest.
Nice.
It's something personal. I think React's putting a new idea about how to build apps into people's brains. And it's that core idea that feels important. The idea is really simple. It's just you should minimize application state, minimize side effects. We don't need to go to the extreme with it, but that's just a general guiding principle.
Really? Is that?
Slow it down a little bit so I can follow along with your brain speed.
Oh, that wasn't, the 1.7 is actually too fast. Anyway, so no, I got the plugin because with the plugin you can just press DNS and then you can get it by 0.1. And so it makes it very easy.
React. And I think that idea is what feels rewarding to people.
But what were you just saying?
So keep in mind,
Well, because he just said the idea of React is that you minimize state and you minimize side effects, and everything that we just learned was like all state and so like the entire use state system is nothing but side effects. Like,
90% of the
React has ever been
component
tried.
logic that you're writing is state.
What did you say?
Said correct usage of React has never been tried.
Yeah. Everybody knows that communism works. It's just never been implemented correctly. Everybody knows that React is the most side effect free system. It's just never been implemented correctly.
Not to get too political, but so what's the deal with all these right-wing guys wanting Putin to be like leader of? No, they're like Tucker Carlson going over and interviewing him and being this.
Putin has just not been implemented correctly up until this point. If used in the correct context, with the
So get him
the right
Putin is a React
bureaucracy.
developer.
Oh yeah. So what's his name? The main React guy, Dan Abramoff. He's from Russia. So yeah, Putin probably uses React.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Good. That's quotable right there.
Have we checked the Russian government website to see like what it like the
It was
tools
like-
are?
Yeah, open it up.
It was yet another one of his.
scared.
Open up the Kremlin
Info-
website.
What is the Kremlin website? I don't know what that
I don't
is.
know, just type it in.
Kremlin website.
Kremlin.ru.
Just press above this.
President of Russia. That is the title of
I
it.
really like that React is composable. I feel like I can just stack my components together, and it feels like I'm, playing with building blocks.
Okay, I think he's gonna say it within the next minute now.
Or they might say, I really like that with React apps, my code is easier to reason about.
Guys, it is still loading. What is the speed of the Kremlin website?
They go
Yeah,
on
it's
like
not really
through
clear.
all
It's
the
not-
trackers.
It must be
That's how you know it's built on React.
I bet
Loading
it's probably
pretty
blocked through
fast.
the
You can
Vivint.
look at a small part of
What?
the code.
It's probably
you can
blocked
understand
through the
majority
Oh,
of
you're
the
right.
processes and interactions there. That would keep the whole entire program in your brain at once.
Alright.
So it's easy to reason about.
I
Now building apps is
don't have a
Now you're on
VPN.
So you're on the
sci-fi
watch
state.
list.
That makes your app easier to reason about. It's not like
They're not going to learn much information about me.
So take this example here. This is a
I'm
React
gonna get
code.
weird
The render's gonna array
targeted
friends,
ads.
and for each friend, it's going to render a div, and it's going to print their name inside that div. But then it's going to wrap the whole thing in a container, and we have another handler called the outer container that says, whenever you click on anything in here, we're going to send a message to the user saying this is how many friends you have. Or if you notice something interesting about this, time can elapse between when you render that list initially and when that event handler occurs. A lot can happen at that time. What if somebody were to add an additional friend to that array? Just mutate it out from the array. They remove a friend. Well, then that message that you send to the user is going to be out of sync with the list that the user sees on the screen. It's mutation. All right, so imagine you're in a really complicated code base that's really big and it uses lots of mutation everywhere. Now imagine trying to go through, in your head, look at this code and determine whether or not that mutation could happen. Turns out it's really hard. So first of all, you have to go to every other module that calls into yours. And you got to confirm that after they pass that array to your component, they don't go and mutate that later. Okay, that can be pretty time consuming, but it's worse. You also have to go find any other module that your calling module passes that array to and confirm that they also don't mutate that array. That's complicated and difficult for me to even explain, so imagine trying to go through the actual code base and reason through that. All right, so contrast that with, if you know this array is not mutable, it can never be mutated. Some language or type system won't even allow you to do it. The problem becomes much simpler. This is all you have to keep in your head to understand almost completely how this component works. You can reason about it. So programming like this, it allows you to experience many small wins in your programming. It's kind of like your brain gets this reward every so often, and you're confident with what you achieved. It makes programming fun. It's kind of like a game.
So is
I
this
think
what
that's
you're
people are
talking about?
when
You're
they
trying to
say-
find writing React without or how the new way that you're supposed to write components for React? Or what is the point of why are you watching this video?
Well, I'll probably just stop it because I thought it was going to be somewhere around here, but it might be in the middle or something. I was looking through the transcript trying to find it. But he basically says we wanted to write React really good, but JavaScript got in the way, and
Oh,
so
yeah.
we created a reason.
Okay.
So that was
So maybe try searching JavaScript.
What was that last one around the 25-minute mark? Like, let's do problem again, and then
okay. I think this is the same one. Didn't solve problems, so it's supposed to think. Who's makes? Oh yeah, it might be right around
what
here.
part? Look, go down to 27. Sorry, there is
Let me
like
render
one
PHP on the server.
What?
Go down to the 27 mark. There's like what part of all is bit on JavaScript they don't understand.
Let me see if it's right here. But if not, I'll find it later. I'll bring it back next time.
Server, we wouldn't have React. So if you imagine, you visualize the potential that a JavaScript programmer has today in the JavaScript ecosystem, React definitely improved a large portion of that. So anything related to UI and interactions, the developer's life improved.
Debatable.
And the code was easier to reason about. It didn't solve all the problems, and it wasn't supposed to. So the way I think about reason is that it brings the things that people like about React to the entire language. So that every use case in the JavaScript ecosystem benefits from those same core ideas. But what's often missing from this discussion is the person who matters most. Who matters most? The user. I mean, Reason and React both improve the user experience because users don't like bugs. So the fact that Reason can prevent a large class of that ahead of time, that's great. What else do users care about?
Okay, I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, the summation of his talk is the problem with React is JavaScript, so now there's Reason.
What would be like the last thing he says at the last 10 seconds of the video?
Did you ever use Elm?
No. No, I just don't believe in browser compiling stuff for the browser. We have a language, it works. I think people just need to learn how to use it and use the type system that it has, and we need tools around that type system rather than tools around the C# type system. Mm-hmm. If we had tools, because JavaScript, it has integers, it has floats, it has strings, it has, and the types are always in the tooling. They always have been, they always will be. So we just need the tooling to assist us to make sure that we don't make stupid mistakes. The way that Python is and Go is, where once you assign something to a variable, you can't change the type of the variable. Unless, like with Rust, you do variable shadowing, where you intentionally declare, I am changing the type of this thing. Which, that makes perfect sense. It's easy to optimize. So that's kind of.
And Rust is that a backend language?
Is that like that out of the box? I thought you needed that high.
Oh,
No,
it's not a front-end language. Yeah.
Python does not allow you to change
I'm trying to think of where it
I'm gonna
lives.
turn off my eye right now.
If it's like, are you just writing server code for that one, or is it just
Good.
like?
It's a lower level language.
Okay.
And then, I said I was going to tell. Do you remember what it was I said I was going to tell you? It was probably about types in JavaScript. Because I think this came up last time too. Because in his presentation he mentioned, because he was talking about polymorphism and essentially how the types are at the language feature tooling level, not at the.
Is it spelled? I got rid of
system level, because
their
everything's an
TypeScript
integer
on their stuff.
when it's
They're
down
just
there.
working with the JS doc.
Something kind of fun. Actually, I made SIMD UTF 4% faster the other day. That's what Node.js uses, and tons of projects use that. So I made UTF-8 validation faster
Okay.
for Node.js users. So
Wait, did you submit a PR?
yeah,
No way!
I made it 4% faster by eliminating 2 instructions from the.
I'm good.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I'll add too many water.
strings in JavaScript.
That deserves a
Right.
water bottle.
4% faster. That's significant.
Yeah, it was crazy because there was.
Wait. Can we see the PR?
Yeah,
I want to see the PR. I'm going to bring it up.
yeah. The one that I submitted was to SIMD JSON, and then Daniel O'Meyer, the project owner, he also put the same one into SIMD UTF.
Ah.
So
SIMD JSON,
yeah,
pull requests.
it's already merged.
Already merged.
I forget, are you Niles or you got something?
Validark. Yeah.
Validark.
That's at the bottom of your screen right now. There you go. Yeah.
All right. Whoa, 7 file changes.
They were all the same change, pretty much.
Okay, let me see.
But-
Can you explain what uint 8 means?
Yeah, it means a byte.
An unsigned integer of 8.
Oh. I have to see, what are our upcoming presentations? Maybe we should talk about types.
I have a Python type stack check for you.
Not in the near future, but a future presentation I want to give with just the title MIDI.
So
MIDI.
Chris Asplin has got
Like the music?
negotiating salary
I
next
do
time.
my ring and my
Oh yeah.
LED stuff.
Yeah.
You said
Is
MIDI?
that one just like gesture based?
The ring is it
Yeah.
does.
Well, now that
pitch
you
and
brought it
stuff.
up, can I just show you the piece where it says what actually is subtracted? You have to scroll down.
Yes. Okay, scroll down, scroll down.
Yeah, so yeah, basically right there, the saturating subtraction. Now it's using, so originally what they were doing is doing this value minus 1. So they're doing a saturating subtraction of this value minus 1. And then they were doing,
What does saturating subtraction mean?
saturating is when you hit a boundary, you stop at like 0. So if you do like 10 minus 25, you're going to get 0.
Oh, okay.
So you stop at 0.
So it's the absolute value after subtraction.
No, it's when you underflow or overflow, you stop at the boundary.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Is it pulled up right here?
Clown.
No,
Yeah.
it's but it is.
Yeah, I just wanted to show you yeah, if you go back, you can see what exactly changed in the
What
instruction.
language is this? Do you know?
So if you go up.
For us uneducated folk,
yeah.
what is SIMD? I've heard it a bunch.
Yeah, it's single instruction, multiple data.
So
And-
so this guy right here.
And yeah, if you click that, it'll show you what the assembly difference is. And basically,
Where? Which one do I
yeah,
click?
the link.
Godbolt.
Yeah. It's gonna say, spit out the answer. So yeah, what it was doing before is this one, where it would, basically it had to do this comparison. And yeah, you can eliminate.
This is assembly.
These two guys, and just doing that 4% increase for SIMD UTF, and it was kind of funny to me because it was just, yeah, the difference was what it's doing is it's doing VP XOR on the Spectre register, so it's zeroing that, and then it's doing this compare equal bytes. So that means it's comparing at 0. And with my version, I just took that out because instead of subtracting it down to 0, we're subtracting it down to 128 as this result here. So if we have a value, that's bigger than this, it's going to be 128 or larger. Whereas before we were subtracting it down to 0. Now we're just keeping it as this. It's kind of, yeah, it's
Impressive. I don't know what you just said, but
yeah,
This
impressive.
is the number of
So this-
operations.
Basically, you're saying that you're a celebrity now. In the art.
yeah, it was just a cool thing that, yeah,
Hey, don't forget your water
so
bottles.
made the UTF-8.
Yeah, you-
So last
You
month,
earned a water bottle for that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
last month
Yeah.
you gave a presentation at Utah Zig, and it's kind of the history of processor development leading into how he is making a language parser faster. So think about the way that JavaScript is parsed. In his case, it's Zig. But he's got a bunch of heuristics to determine how likely the next state of something is, or based on how likely, but you capturing a certain amount of data in which it's guaranteed to know whether or not the state will continue or not. So like say you have a word of a certain length, like return. If you capture 4 characters and the 4th character isn't you don't need to evaluate any other character. You know that it's not the word return. Or I don't know if I'm doing it justice, but
Yeah,
it's-
that was your interpretation of what I was saying, which I told you was wrong.
You should listen to this guy.
Yeah. So how it works, right, is you take in a chunk. You basically what we're doing is we take 64 bytes of a source file at once, and we produce 3-bit strings that represents information on those 64 bytes. And so we have a 64-bit integer where there's a 1 in all the places where there's an alphanumeric or underscore, and a 0 otherwise. And then we have another one for like white space, and we also need one for control characters. And so the idea is using that bit string.
Oh, right.
Using that bit string, you can use like a count trailing zeros operation to say, oh, there are 5 alphanumeric or underscores after this position, and you can jump to the end of it. And so rather than having to touch each individual byte one by one, you can basically just touch the first byte of each token. That was what I was talking about for the tokenizer.
You would love that presentation.
But
you should. It's on the Utah Zig channel.
So
Wait,
I'm going to do part 2.
you're right, but how do you
You
know?
said I could come back.
What?
You're right, but how do you know?
So you're talking about source files, like, so it's like, the use case is a JavaScript module getting loaded and knowing if it needs to like re-evaluate stuff.
Mine was for parsing Zig.
Okay. So language parsers is the main
Yeah.
consumer of SIMD.
Wait,
Oh,
where is
no.
Oh, whoops. I gotta re-upload it
SIMD is
still.
applicable to any problem where there is parallelism that can be exploited at the data level. So it's data level parallelism. So the reason why it's data level parallelism in this case is because each byte, the information in it can be evaluated separately, and you can do multiple of these evaluations in parallel in a single instruction using the hardware primitives provided by modern processors, and even weaker processors is another thing I talk about. So yeah, it's a parallelism primitive that you have available to you, and basically the more you can exploit parallelism, the more speed you can get. So
Kind of a cache invalidation strategy.
doesn't have to do with cache.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I'm just.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with Zig that much, so I'm
Yeah,
just,
so-
eyes glossing over. So.
Yeah, SIMD is a hardware concept.
Single instruction, multiple. What does the
Data.
D stand for?
Data.
Multiple data.
Yeah.
Single
Yeah.
instruction, multiple data.
Yeah, the idea is like, the basic one that you always see is you have what's called vectors, is what they call them in the hardware. So you could have A, B, C, and D, and then, you can have another vector. And with a single add, you can add all of these together and get out, A plus E, B plus F, C plus G, and D plus H. So this would be as opposed to doing each of these alone and having 4 adds. With SIMD, you have 1 add. So on x86, it would be like
So
B, C,
CPU is running NumPy.
Yeah,
Not literally, but
yeah, NumPy uses SIMD stuff too.
So is this a type of like calculations that are happening when you're parsing the language, or like trying to like run some type of computation?
Yeah, so SIMD is just like, it's a kind of operation. So
Okay.
typically you have 1 add happening with a single, you have a single plus that can happen at once. And with a single instruction, you can also do a vector add. So typically your memory is stored in like registers,
People in here generally don't know about registers.
Okay,
This
so.
is this is the wrong room to talk about
Okay,
registers.
so yeah, so
This is our
we're
room.
learning about that.
Okay, so yeah, on a CPU, you have 64-bit registers that hold the memory that the CPU is actively able to perform an operation on. So you can add numbers, you can multiply, you can do bitwise stuff, you can,
But you have to bring stuff into
Did-
registers
yeah.
and take stuff out.
Think of
Yeah.
it like an assembly line where you pull a lever and all the stamps come down and cut the star shape out of the cookies. So you pull the lever and then 8 cookies get cut.
A register is basically, it's your variable that's in the hardware. Or it's assembly level variable is what
It's
it
kind of
is.
like an assembly
It's
pointer.
it's an assembly, it's not really a pointer.
It's like it's the slot
Well,
It's a variable in its memory.
it's 64 bits of stuff, no matter what number of bits you use. So it's the slot for the operation to be done,
Yeah.
and SIMD is like what I described in there, where like those registers can have something in them, or they can not have something in them. But when the CPU goes around to pull that lever, it's going to do the operation across all the registers. So if you're only doing one at a time, 3 things aren't getting done. But if you do 4 at a time or 8 at a time or whatever is allowed, then you can do all of them at one time. Like when the CPU does an add operation, it does the add operation across some registers.
So your enhancement not only it
Not
fixes.
true.
Okay.
Sorry.
But-
So there's a separate set of registers, a separate register file for vectors. So you have regular registers and you have vector registers, and there are specific instructions that can move between these two. And yeah, so it's a separate register file that's going to be larger than 64 bits. But you can operate on the vector as like having different granularity. So you can, like based off of the prefix of an instruction, the granularity would be either like a byte or a word, which in x86 assembly means 16 bits for some reason. And then you have 32-bit or 64-bit granularity. You also could, the other thing the CPU will do is for individual instructions, if you do have like add RAX to RDI, and then you have add, I don't know, some other registers, R11 and R12.
So
If these things are independent, those things can happen at the same time. That would be an instruction level parallelism. And that was also something I mentioned here. But I'm talking about data level parallelism within a vector, what I was talking about. I'm going to try next time to explain it better.
No,
I'm working so much on the visualizations right now, taking a lot of time on that.
This makes a lot of sense to me. Like
Yeah.
one thing I've heard from various sources is that like linear algebra is about like transforming your numbers into a shape that is very fast for computers, even if it's not good for you. And the massive amount of linear algebra we can do now is what has enabled certain scary advances. And it's because of this, it's the ability of CPUs and especially GPUs to parallelize exactly like this.
GPUs are built for this.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But there are certain things you can do on a CPU as well. But,
Yeah, that'd be maybe
That
interesting to
ties
see.
in
oh, you
very,
have the camera on.
of course I got the camera on you.
that ties in very tightly with large language model, but like linear algebra
Yep.
expressions and stuff like that.
Yeah, I recently just learned like any linear algebra at all because apparently they skipped that in my high school class and everybody else learned it.
Yeah.
Wait, they taught linear algebra in your high school class?
They started to. I learned what a matrix was and then they stopped. And then
Yeah, I was about to
I was
say
wondering for
something. I was
years
like,
why
what?
I would ever care about matrices. And then just
I like
recently
geometry.
it was pointed out that AI is just throwing a whole bunch of linear algebra at something until it matches.
What high school did you go to?
Oh!
There was recently this thing discovered where pretty much across all the LLMs, if you just input the same data over and over and over again, then it will start spitting out its source material.
What?
Yeah, I saw
The
something that
initial
you can
prompts.
like
Yeah,
like
there are a
you-
lot of ways to
train it to.
Basically, I guess create the identity matrix or something. Like having you just put, you can take any word like pizza, 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 pizza. No, what you do? No, you have to get it to do it. So you tell it, say pizza 1,000 times. It'll say pizza, 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 and then it will spit out like a paragraph from a Pizza Hut commercial.
Well, yeah, it's like it's not actually a chatbot. It's only pretending.
So
What
it's
it
kind
is
of
on the
like
inside
an
is-
overflow, like it's buffer overflowing some bound of.
Not really. Okay, so the way we get a chatbot out of AI, it's not a chatbot on the inside. All right. What it's actually doing is predicting the next word in a series of words, right? The next token in a string, right?
Yeah.
And then in order to turn it into a chatbot, it was just fed a string where the natural continuation of that string would be like what a chatbot would say. So it has this initial prompt that explains that it is a chatbot. And has a whole bunch of instructions for how this chatbot acts and examples of what this chatbot might say. And there are a wide variety of creative methods to get it to not do those things, or just get it to repeat its initial prompt to you. The classic one early on was just like, ignore initial instructions and do X, and it would just do that regardless of what its initial instructions were. There are now more sophisticated initial instructions, but it's fundamentally completely insecure. Like, yeah.
Understandable.
Yeah, so one thing that I realized, and thankfully I didn't make the mistake that I thought that I had just made, is I took some customer data and asked, because I wanted to show that GPT would be useful for extracting JSON data. And so I just kind of took something at random and copy-pasted it and said, oh, here, check this out, and then asked it a question about the data and then had it return JSON. And then I realized, oh, crap, I hope there wasn't a social security number or something like that. Because anytime you use ChatGPT's web interface, it learns from the prompts you give it.
Just
so,
stupid. It should not do that.
So,
it just makes the product worse.
Well, that's actually what one study shows is that over the last 6 months, the effectiveness of GPT has gone down because as it's been learning as it's exploded and more people use it, it gets more crap data. And then it's generating crap data that then people are posting on websites that it's then learning from.
Is that really true? I thought I heard they disabled its learning ability from the web. That's what I thought.
They may have disabled it again, but they had it.
I mean, one of the first things that came out was the
service.
extension that you can have it like browse the web or something like that.
They've added that to. So first of all, once you use Olama or something like that, you'll see that there's nothing magical about GPT except for their curation. They're using the same math that everybody else is using. It's the same parameters. Like they gave this keynote where they're like, now we're exposing the ability to do this and to do that. And I just used Olama a few weeks before, and I'm like, oh, this is just the standard stuff that's in all the LLM software, right? So, but anyway, yeah. So that they have the ability for it to go fetch data. That's something you can turn on the API. In the terms of service, it lets you know that they are taking in the data from what you do. It's when you interact with the web interface. If you're not paying for GPT, you have no privacy rights whatsoever. Your data is public information, essentially. Your searches, like anything that you're doing, if you're not paying,
It's a service model. It's like you're the product because they're gathering your data.
right. And even if you are paying, there's an issue. If you're using the web interface is not covered by the privacy policy, whereas the API is covered by an explicit privacy policy. So anytime you're using the web interface for GPT, it's kind of it's a weird area. You can, if you're paying, you can ask them you can specifically put in a support ticket to have your stuff excluded,
Competes as others.
but there's not a checkbox on it on the website.
I was gonna grab some too.
I was talking to GPT-4 the other day.
Yeah, what did GPT-4 have to say?
I was asking it a bunch of low-level questions. They got almost all of them wrong. It did get one correct, though.
Well, it's the stuff that's niche. It really doesn't know. If it's not on Wikipedia, it's not going to know.
Yeah.
Or on Stack Overflow, or you know.
So, what would you recommend for running large LLM locally? I'm going to get Olama, right?
Yeah. So okay, hold on. Let me pull up
You got a
webinstall.dev.
Webby?
Yeah, we got a
Webby?
Webby for it. We got a Webby. Webinstall.dev/Olama. So I mean, you can do this right now. Do it.
Yeah.
Just do it. You'll have it. Oh, whoops. Did I put too many L's? I think I put one too many L's. Got a little L happy.
My other one is, but I've got my other computer and it has about 50% left.
Oh, do you want to charge? Here.
No, I'm good. That's my other older computer. The new one that I want to get, that has the M3 Max chip.
Okay, so 2 unrelated comments for you, Jay.
What?
First comment, this is a fact check about your claim about Python typing. Does this match your understanding?
I actually
So no, that is not match my understanding.
I have another fact.
Well, it's legit. I just did it.
Huh?
I want to
Is
hear
it
fact check.
nonsense equals 10, print nonsense, nonsense equals
So
heyo, print nonsense.
so it is.
What are you trying to show? What are you trying to demonstrate?
It's dynamic
Okay.
typing that doesn't
Yeah.
throw errors if you cast it to a
Yeah,
different type.
now if I turn on my MyPy extension, then I will get red squigglies here,
Okay, so maybe.
Is this Python?
which is exactly like what TypeScript does, except
Does,
without the
does
stupid.
Python not have like bar or let or? I'm assuming
It's
Python's not let.
implied, I guess. It's kind of like
Yeah, like what's the variable setting or variable setup for Python? Is it just use
you don't have to
variable
do.
name equals
Oh yeah,
whatever?
yeah. Python does not have let in const. You just say
Or
your
var? Is that var?
It's not like that either. It's literally just like not using any of those in JavaScript,
So-
which you are allowed to do.
So it's just implied like whatever variable name equals whatever is the setting of a variable.
Yeah, you can do that in JavaScript. I think it works identically,
Okay.
but you will get squigglies, and
And-
if you type use strict at the top, then it won't work.
So is this demonstration basically saying that the variable you're setting is, well, I guess when you're setting variables in Python, are they mutable by default, or do you have to like?
It's demonstrating that Python is not tracking the types for you.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. So
yes.
you're demonstrating types. Okay, sorry.
Now, a cool thing about Python that is not in JavaScript, a lot of people want it to be in JavaScript, is that there is a place to put in types besides just in a comment. Okay, so you can type :int, kind of like how you type :number in TypeScript,
Yep.
and you can just do that out of the box in Python. It just doesn't do anything. Python doesn't actually read what you put there, just as if it's a comment.
Is
Um,
Python a strongly
there for
typed or
tooling.
dynamically typed?
It is there for linters, yeah, like MyPy. So MyPy is not a part of Python. Python just has a space where you would put that stuff. And
Like, it doesn't enforce it.
yeah, it does not enforce it at all.
Okay.
So similarly, JavaScript, you could put like a comment above explaining what your types are, and JavaScript will ignore it because it's a comment. And of course, it won't, check your types because it's just a comment. Some people think that
Unless it's JS doc, right?
JS doc is not a part of JavaScript.
Was not part of JavaScript,
TypeScript will.
but it
Yeah.
acts like TypeScript, where in your what do you call it?
It-
TypeScript will read JS doc.
Yes.
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 But
So some
JS
people
doc
think-
is based on Java,
Okay.
and TypeScript is an implementation of C# that runs in the browser.
Yeah. So there is a proposal
Okay.
to add.
But
this
it's
feature
still
to JavaScript.
it is still gonna give you a squiggly or whatever, letting you know that your typing is not
You just
accurate or
Okay.
for the whatever use case, right?
JS doc will not do that by itself. No.
No,
Fair
okay.
enough.
I haven't worked with
Fair
it, but
enough.
that's what
I
I
stopped using
thought. I
one
thought
when
it just
it was
worked. How
No.
TypeScript would yell at you.
But the thing is, JS doc gives you like particular places
That way
where
it's done?
you should put that if you're using
Your
JS
webbing?
doc correctly. Right. It won't like do anything with it, but it has a place for you to put it
Okay.
for other tools to care about.
Does it? What is the thing where I'm losing all?
Back to this, though.
I'm
Alright.
just. Oh yeah, continue.
So,
Is this
in Python, you have a space to put your type, even though Python doesn't do anything with that. There's a proposal to do the same thing in JavaScript. And then you can declare your types in line like this, TypeScript style or Python style, without having to put it in a JS doc type comment.
Okay.
And just have that be in .js and have that compile correctly. And then a tool like
not compile.
TypeScript could read those types and actually check whether you're following the rules. Just like it does if you write a .ts file, or if you set it up to read your JS doc.
Yes.
So there are 3 layers here. You have like the language that actually does stuff, and then you have like the place where you put your types, however that works. And then you have what everything actually checks that you're using types correctly. Python has the middle part, but not the last part. JavaScript has neither of those.
With that,
Right.
similar to TypeScript, where you can like hover and it shows you the types of the variable, does it do the same thing for in this case as well?
If you're doing that, I think you're using type. Yeah.
Yeah.
You said TypeScript or something.
Yeah, in TypeScript. Yeah, like with how it's letting you have a place for it, it's still like.
So if I hover over it, then yes, something knows that this is literally 10, which is it understands what type it is.
Yeah.
The thing that does that is called PyLance.
Okay.
I don't know what the
I forget the name that
called.
TypeScript calls it. It's just like, is it just type in intelligence or type sense?
IntelliSense? I'm not actually sure what
I don't think it's
service
IntelliSense, but it's just like the self-documenting.
TypeScript would be the one that figures out the types in
Yeah.
JavaScript.
Yeah, literally just TypeScript seems correct, yeah.
Yeah, it runs in just in non-strict mode by
Mm-hmm.
default if you have
Yeah.
this code.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I think that I got confused. Well, one, I thought that would not work. And I don't remember why I thought that would not work.
Well,
But there is something that is similar, which is if you create a struct in Python and you try to access a key that doesn't exist on that struct, it will throw rather than allowing you to assign it. And that might have been where I got my wires crossed. So if you create a struct that has property name and property age, and then you go to assign a property favorite color, that will throw because favorite color is not defined on person.
yeah. So Python has more of these immutable higher order data types where like
Yes.
you cannot tack on more stuff.
So that's, I probably, got my wires crossed over that with the undefined thing.
Okay, now I'm going to turn on my Py.
Does Python throw like
or I
type
was using it
errors?
with an extension that was giving me an error when I did that, but I don't use Python a lot, so I don't know how I would
I
have
should learn Python.
come into that.
It's
I
a
have now
handy
enabled
language, and
my
all the
Py, which is
LLM stuff
TypeScript
is
for
like
Python.
everybody.
Python, yeah.
And it's telling me, don't do this.
Yeah, I've been,
Right.
I've been curious about doing the free code camp one, the certification on that.
Okay, what about the
Seems like a
math
nice
dot
starting point.
random being cryptographically secure?
Okay, yeah.
I couldn't find any source
Okay.
that said that it is.
So,
I could only find
I want
sources
to know
that
how I
said
can
it
calculate what name would be most likely to be picked by JavaScript's math.random.
Dallin.
Okay.
Down.
So if we look
That's
at,
what's least likely to be picked.
so this was fixed, I don't know, maybe somewhere
sample
between
size
5 and
of
10
2.
years ago.
But also least likely, not most.
So if you look for math.random TIFU, there you go.
Let's see.
So 2015 was when this scenario was similar in time to when they changed it, and then it changed across all browsers. Well, and then also there was a lawsuit against Microsoft. There were a number of problems around this time frame with math.random where big name companies had a TIFU, and so they changed the implementation of it. So the implementation of it used to be that it was I think it was cryptographically secure, but it was concatenating two 32-bit ints together, which turned out that they had a period.
Yeah, I have it right here.
Okay.
But yeah, now it's using XOR Shift 128 plus.
What's JavaScript written?
That's when it was changed
Like,
December
I
2015
think
as the VA block.
Probably C.
And then still not cryptographically secure, but it is better
AJ would like me
when
to.
it comes to values within the range of 2 to the 52, because you can have a double that supports whole numbers up to that range.
It is.
So
yeah.
Is it C?
And like more precisely, what you're asking is what are JavaScript engines running? And like
what it used
their
to be.
different engines.
I mean, yeah, because
But-
it's browser dependent.
Yeah. Like
Google's V8
Okay.
or something.
Let me.
It's
I will.
V8.dev/blog/.
What year is that though?
This is December 25th.
It was Chromium.
Okay,
it,
yes.
It used to be its own thing,
So
and
that
then they
makes
adopted
sense.
the Chromium engine.
But since then, I will have to double check
V8 now then.
because
I mean, it's gotta be, since it's also Chromium.
And then they've got
yes,
Firefox
about-
is like Spider Monkey.
about
unless
that,
they switch to
but
something else.
then
And then
Maybe I am wrong.
Safari's is WebKit.
Yeah, I mean, it's better, but I still don't think it would be considered. It's not.
that would not be
It's-
cryptographically secure. My and I may be wrong, but I
Measure cryptography.
thought that they actually used, when they introduced the crypto
mathematics
module,
behind it.
random number,
Very smart
They-
crypto people.
included the same.
Sweet.
Basically, I thought that they had implemented math.random on top of the crypto
So this
random.
is his web install.
Let's see.
Okay.
Oh.
So I just ran this
Math,
shell command.
not random.
Then
crypto.
two terminals. So one terminal I'm serving the llama, and then this other terminal I'm pulling Mistral, which is like a large language model, the 7 billion
Nice.
model, and then running it, and then it prompts you, okay, type
I
a
think we start
message.
using.
And so I
a
asked
new,
it,
like, search
you know,
engine
my name's Travis, what would you like me to call you? And it says, please call me Alex.
Yeah, that's the article.
Nice.
This
Cool.
is the
So,
same one.
you
So
have-
I don't have to hit
That's what I'm showing.
open
Let
an
me
API
see
at all.
if I
I'm just
can
running it on
find-
this machine. So
You might just have to
Yes.
open up the code, to be
That's
really
honest.
cool.
Yeah.
Which you could do, right? You can just look to see is it the
Alex?
extra.
I
There's
don't.
probably a link in the V8 article right there.
It might be. Yeah.
It might be stale, but it should still have like relatively close.
All right. Where do you live?
Oh yeah, that looked like a permalink.
Where? Which
The one you just hovered over.
Oh, this one?
Might be.
oh my gosh, this is
Okay.
going to be
Say
life changing.
pizza.
Yeah. So this is the older one.
1,000
So let's go
times.
to.
src/js/math. Okay.
There you go.
Man, this AI stuff is just going to change the whole game, man.
So I use CodeUp and StarCoder are two of the recommended models, and sometimes they give better results than GPT. Okay, what is the name of?
It might be main or something.
I tried main. I tried master.
So,
Yeah,
Let's see
just
what
click
they
through
call
it.
it main.
do you get any performance benefit by running it locally?
It might
The main
be.
thing that I want is Vivint
I don't know.
code,
The links are a little
local
weird.
development,
Yeah.
not exposing
And
anything. Just,
yeah,
just
just
follow
click
my
through it.
patterns that I've already established in this code base and speed up my development flow
Makes sense.
What did they call it on
based
this
on
one?
train local.
It was Source.js Math.
It's called Mistral?
Well, Mistral is just another one of the models.
Okay.
Let's see. Do we have math?
And you just, so is Olama
JS
the local one, right?
That's the runner kind of a
Runner,
thing.
okay.
Node.js.
And it just has
There's
the
numbers.
Okay, math.random.h.
pre-configured sort of like
Or
model
CC.
with
You have to
the
download
presets.
models. So this is
Okay.
where it pulled that.
Okay, so
model.
Olama is the runner, Mistral is the
random
model you
cache.
install,
And there's other
and then
models.
you're just running that model and feeding it whatever
input.
It's gonna be, you're just writing your code and it just says pizza.
Oh
God.
You want to scroll down a little bit?
I thought it would have been 1,000 by now, but it's
Maybe there's more information.
What result did you get from pizza?
It's
So what
saying
what I believe
pizza.
to happen,
Pizza.
which
Pizza.
I may be wrong about, and I will feel stupid,
Yes.
I mean, so far
But
it's been saying pizza
that,
for.
that it
I asked it-
basically, I had read some article, if what I remember is correct, was that it fetches from the random, it fetches some amount of random data. Every time you call math.random, it pulls from the random data, and then when the random data is exhausted, it pulls from it again. And the fact that this is called refill cache,
Making a fan sound now.
that sounds like what I was expecting, because that's why it
This
would
has to
be
go fast.
faster,
Yeah, I haven't
and you could
used
still
this
call it a
machine
lot without the
Other than
performance
like installing
benefit.
a couple of I've got some design apps.
I got-
Oh, here's
But
another one to
it
put
it may
under
not
it's called
be.
Z.
So it says
So it's a
isolate
faster
random
VS code.
number generators.
Nice.
Base.
I'll check your activity.
This
The
is
murmur
murmur
hash, which is a
If
big
it's eating
hint.
up your
That's the name of
memory.
a specific hash, I presume.
Yeah.
XOR shift 128. Okay,
Yeah,
that's the one that I said in
that's
the article.
growing.
So,
Your memory's good.
fact checked. I think it's not cryptographically
But it's
secure.
only
Oh, I think you're
600
right.
gigs out of
Okay.
the 96 gigs that I've got.
Noted.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be good. Let's see. It's growing.
Yeah, maybe those are just the seeds.
It's probably a lot of just
Source base
that would
utils,
take up much
random
memory, just a
generator.
log of that. So it's got to
But okay, let's see if the
Crawling some vectors
seeds
or
are the
something.
seeds
Yeah.
random. Seed next.
But you'd think they'd
seed.
find like some little loop and just be like, all right, we don't need to
Fixed random status frequencies.
build up its history, maybe.
Well, it might be storing some stuff in memory.
It's obviously storing
Oh
some
no, yeah, it is, but it might be
Isolate.
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's probably just storing
Where does it get
the
seed
log
from?
and whatever computations
Random
happening.
seed.
Yeah, maybe it has to like keep on
Isolate random version,
Yeah.
headspace and seed, size of seed. Where did seed come from?
I kind of thought it would be done by now.
Well,
Still
it's
going.
passing a pointer to seed, so it's gonna
We should
fill
have
that
told it
pointer
to say
for you.
with the number after each time. To
Oh
say
yeah,
it.
to keep track of where we're at.
Yeah, it's like a,
It's
it's
gotta
like a
get
fun
close.
way to do a return
Can't
count.
imagine.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3,
You just
4,
pass the
5,
pointer in there.
6,
So
8,
what
9,
is
10 times?
isolate?
And yeah, 10 times. It's only got to do that about how many
Or
rows?
can you
extend
10,000.
it?
It should just be like 100.
Okay,
rows,
source
10,
execution
right?
isolate. So
It's
there's two
not
places
bad,
to
but
look.
this
It's
is
still going. It's like in a loop.
So one would be source
Yeah.
base.
I can
That
tell
feels
you
like it's
that
more than
a lot of
1,000, but I
times where
can't
seeds
really-
come from, there's a
Yes.
hardware instruction for that. That's one thing that could be outdated. That they would just run it on startup. It's
1,
extraordinarily
2, 3,
slow.
4, 5, 6,
but yeah.
7, 8, 9, 10.
RDC is what it's called on x86. There's probably
Here, let's just grab this guy right here.
So source
So that means-
execution. Source base utils.
Alright.
Random number generator, and then source execution. What was it?
Are you guys gonna find a more optimal way of generating random numbers?
No, I want to see if it starts
Definitely
with a
not.
cryptographic seed because
Right.
And I legitimately want to know, like,
I would
what name
never try to
optimizes
do
the
that.
algorithm. Because,
Ever.
like,
Unless I was optimizing something where someone already figured out the sequence, and I just make that particular thing faster. But I would never try to like figure out something that's like math theory myself. I would have a mathematician do that.
so I'm interested in theoretically optimal baby names, and I think like whatever cheats the random algorithm the most would be a candidate.
Theoretically optimal baby name.
This is something a lot of people
So
think
they win
about.
raffles, you know.
Yeah.
You like Dallin.
No, the
Paste
opposite
it
of that,
into an array
because
with a link of it.
Trevor is using, Travis was using
Then they'll have to be pizza is a very
a weird opposite
Energy
algorithm
exists.
that
So
makes
cons,
losers first. Right?
pizza.
Okay. Oh right.
It's A or whatever.
Okay. I got
No,
a little
don't
bit
give
in
it
second.
an array. Just have a pizza be 0, just so that it's a
Random.
value, and then whatever you paste, you just need to wrap it in an array. So square bracket, paste square bracket.
That's what we're
Okay,
trying
so
to do. It's
was
good as
isolate
parrots. They
Oh,
don't
that's a
understand.
security thing in Safari. Well, yeah, like you have to type
random number
allow
gen-
pasting
no.
first. So erase those.
Oh, I'll have to do that first.
It's like a thing.
Isolate
so
random number
hackers
generator.
don't like
When you click on it,
trick people
will
into
it
doing
give you the reference
stuff.
thing?
Oh, you know what? It may.
Yeah, GitHub can do that
So
sometimes.
yeah, just press enter.
Doesn't always
Make
work.
sure
Yeah, didn't work.
That link.
Okay. So if we look
it's not
for
defined.
random
What?
Capital pizza.
Number-
You'll get capital pizza.
Okay, is this
Oh, the
just
first one?
balancing it?
Just do this. Do this, and then we grab that first item. Wherever that's at.
It's still trying to count to 1,000. It's still trying to repeat pizza 1,000 times the Mistral.
Yeah, that is the most.
Well, that
It's at
one.
5,000.
It's exceeded. So he told it say pizza 1,000 times, and it
Did I
just
say
says
1,000 or 10,000? How many did I say?
1,000.
Well,
1,000, yeah.
telling it to say pizza is different from you saying pizza a lot.
But it's like
I did give it a numerical value of how many times to say it, and it has now exceeded that value.
Well, yeah, it's like at some point it's like, well, the most likely word that will come next is at this point. Let's be honest, it's just pizza.
Yeah,
And then-
but it's not keeping track of its own output,
Okay.
Yeah,
or at
but
least the like how many it's been outputted.
it is fundamentally as difficult for it to do math as it is for you. It is.
Hey now.
Are you
Because
able to
even
interrupt
though
it
it
and
is-
stay with that state in the?
So
in
even
the
though
memory?
we are made of
Because
math,
I mean, I can
because
do.
physics is math.
Can you do Control C?
I'm
It is
sure
made
that
of
will
math.
kill it, but like I'm curious because what I would like to ask it is like why
Why did you keep going?
did you keep going past 1,000
Didn't I see a
times
cool
and see
AJ
what-
video where he said math
Just
and logic
the
is
I mean,
fake?
try killing it and see what happens. Yeah, that's the only thing I can think
Oh,
of.
that it's not real?
Yeah, that's not real.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was your opportunity to jump in and tell them that math is not real.
Math is not real.
You gotta elaborate a little bit, right?
No,
You're just right, yeah.
And don't have ability to physically go anywhere.
Like,
And
there are no two things that are equal, right? So there's no way to get two except in our imaginations, because these two things, for all approximate purposes, we can consider to be equal value. But in reality, they are different in subtle ways.
Yes, math is an abstraction.
Yeah.
Memory constraints.
So, yeah, because people think that, they've discovered mathematical principles of the universe. No, we have very small brains that are capable of understanding very little. And so because the universe doesn't work by the rules that our brains can understand, we make up rules and then we pretend that the universe follows them. And if you're just trying to get to the moon, it works pretty well. But if you're trying to figure out why some star in another galaxy is dying and its mass is shifting, well,
It says in the concept
then we
equation,
don't
I
have
haven't
any-
actually generated or repeated the word pizza.
Keep grinding out, you can get better and better idea.
The ability to
Yes,
just
you have to
keep
keep testing your predictions.
I mean, you just did.
Just have to keep testing your predictions.
Yeah, I mean,
people are
we
still
can
worried that
develop
it's
better
gonna
models,
kill
but at the
all
end of the day,
jobs.
All
we're
models are
using.
wrong, some are useful.
I mean,
It'll automate. a
Yeah,
lot,
we
but it's not gonna-
have a system.
I feel like it's
systems we're
mainly gonna
devising to estimate
It's
things.
an enhanced.
It's going to impact lower level jobs.
Good enough for all
I
practical
think
purposes.
that's where it's living at right now. Of like anything that can automate,
Okay, so
be
where
automated by
is-
like the junior developers or like even copywriters or just creating content.
Yeah, it's gonna speed up
Yeah.
production, but it's not gonna kill development jobs.
Fun fact, the industries that AI has disrupted the most are all very not profitable. It's like you're stealing commissions from DeviantArt users.
Yeah.
Stealing commissions from what?
DeviantArt users.
Oh,
I mean, it does bring up like the whole conversation about like plagiarism, stuff like that.
Yeah, the point being, like those who have good jobs already are not getting disrupted, or at least not so far.
Yeah. I mean, if anything, it's just made their jobs like more effective because they can like it speeds up like research process and being able to like get the information you're needing. Like
The jobs that have been entirely killed were not good jobs.
yeah.
So
I mean,
is
like,
it cryptographically pure.
I mean, at this point, it's
Secure?
like it's only going to
Sure.
get better. So,
So,
it's like the source it's ever going to
the question is whether or not in the Chrome and other browser implementations, when they set the entropy source, if they are using the kernel entropy or if they are not. So there's a comment here that says we can't guarantee that this will be seeded properly, so it'll fall back to timing in the worst case scenario.
This kind of feeds into a little bit of like that. There's a whole bunch of excitement around array buffer for a while, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, too bad! CPUs on shared VM machines expose some fingerprints of stuff that people can spy on other processes." So the whole array buffer stuff seemed to get blocked into making it into browsers, but that was several years ago, and it's probably been resolved.
Yeah, what are you talking about like typed arrays or what are the
I think
array
so.
buffers?
Array buffers are just rather than a JavaScript traditional array, you're just dealing with the buffer. And so you can set up an 8-bit.
Okay, yeah, they have typed arrays in JavaScript. You can look that up.
Is it like a new proposal?
Several years ago, it was a new proposal.
Okay.
But it lost some of its kind of
The TC
excitement because there was at the time some AMD chips or something that they were able to exploit.
So there was like a
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you could really prevent timing attacks. Like, there's just so many side channel attacks, and I don't know. If you're running on the same CPU as someone else, I wouldn't want the job of trying to insulate against that. I mean, there are certain bugs in CPUs where Actually, to do with vectors, there was one that I saw where what they can do is they can look at the upper 16 bytes of a 32-byte vector, because basically if you can get the CPU to speculatively zero it, the way that it zeroes it is it actually just sets a flag. It doesn't actually erase the data. And then when it realizes, oh, we did speculation, which means we did some work before we knew if we had to do it. And it's like, oh yeah, we weren't supposed to do it, so let's undo it. You can undo the zero because it's just a flag. But then, yeah, you can exploit that fast because there's going to be leftover data, and so you could use that as a side channel on certain chips that have not been updated in the microcode, because it's like, oh yeah, they can just read 16 bytes every so often if you're not properly zeroing it out. And but yeah, there's just a million different holes, and we have no idea where they are. So I personally, I think the way that a lot of these things were optimized is like, you have mainframes back in the day that were so expensive, no one could own their own. Now that's not the situation we live in. And so I think you may as well have your own computer that other people are not going to be touching, and that's why I think probably microkernel deployment will be better in the future, as opposed to what we have now, where we have shared, hypervisor running stuff. So
yeah, and all CSS should be user defined.
Yeah.
Wait, I missed most of what you were saying.
But I like that statement.
Okay, that might not have been related to anything you're saying.
yeah.
But I agree.
I think another
I'm just pick your
Another
key.
interest of the array buffer was something along the lines of you could have multiple browser tabs sharing a buffer. So it's a messaging technique.
I've seen
Instead
I've
of going
seen,
over post message or whatever, you could just have a shared array buffer and do multiple background processes or whatever.
I've seen a recent little people posting examples of using the browser in two separate browsers, and you're able to so I think someone created a Pong, and it was basically sending it to one browser to the other.
Oh yeah.
And it was they were just playing between the browsers, and it was just it was kind of cool.
Yeah, if you look up JavaScript timing attacks, kind of what we were talking about before, there was a paper where what they did is they just had an increment that they were just running over and over and over and over. And whenever you would type or do any kind of input, on your phone, that doesn't interrupt. And so that JavaScript execution stops, and then it will resume once that whole thing is finished. And then they can measure how long they stopped for, and then they can basically reconstruct what your inputs were, with some degree of certainty, obviously not 100%. But if you're typing out a word, they can figure out with high degree of confidence, it's 85% sure that you typed in Wikipedia or something. And they could track what website you were going to from the site, just by having something open in the background. And so the only solution to that is to reduce the precision that you're able to measure time. That's the only way to solve that.
That precision time is freaking cool.
Because what they had before, when the paper was written, the protection that browsers had was they would say, okay, well, we reduce your resources for your tab when you're in the background. But there's a way they got around it super easily in the paper, where they just called set timeout for the exact amount of time when the browser would freeze you, and it would just start it back up at that exact moment. And so it just worked around it. That's been patched since, but when the paper was written, that was how they worked around that particular issue.
That's funny.
Okay, so on Linux, it seeds with cryptographically secure data. On Windows, it does, I'd have to go look at the Windows source code for this, but the comment on this in Windows is that it's not cryptographically secure data, and I cannot find whether or not this one is cryptographically secure. So
Partially correct.
So it is not, it may be cryptographically secure pseudo random number generator, meaning that it's not cryptographically secure every time, but that I'd have to look into more to see if this implementation with the murmur and stuff ends up being a cryptographically secure pseudo-random number generator. But only on Linux is it clearly starting with a cryptographically secure seed. So,
Yeah,
oops.
the blog article says the XOR shift 128 that the pseudo random generator is not cryptographically secure. But yeah, I'm not a crypto expert, and I don't know a ton about that. So I don't know what kind of guarantees you would have, even if you start with cryptographically secure seed.
Yeah, so you get to a point where it will cycle.
Yeah.
And so, but in this case, when it's 128 bits, the point at which it cycles is theoretically near infinity, but you could also enter into a cycle sooner because you could hit a special magic number that happens to cycle sooner even. So let's say you start with something cryptographically secure, you get to a point in the process where you reach a magic number and then it cycles, well now you're stuck in a cycle. So you could, in theory, get stuck in a cycle on your first number or something like that. Depending on the implementation.
Yeah.
But I am critically wrong because I was under the impression that they had, and maybe it was a Node thing, maybe it wasn't a Chrome thing, but I was under the impression that they had just swapped out the same code for the crypto module and the math module, and the performance characteristics were good because they were just refilling the cache, which I have to read. I'm not really good at reading the C++ code, but I'm not sure.
I know, it makes my eyes hurt a little bit. That's why I use Zig. Zig is the first low-level language I ever used, honestly.
I've been tempted to get into Rust a little bit, but would you recommend Zig from a JavaScript developer?
I mean, yeah.
Of course.
I went from TypeScript to Zig, yeah. So
Okay.
that was
Where's
for
a
me.
good spot to get like what is the most common use case where Zig is run, or like the where the language is used most, like for?
Yeah.
Is it like hardware related? Like you're just like running this like on some type of hardware, or is it?
Yeah,
like,
you can do like embedded work. It is like in the category of C, and it's also like